Hello and thanks for joining us on this, the Sportsman Untitled podcast live stream in association with Betfred here on YouTube. We'll be going live very shortly, so get your popcorn, get your headphones on and tune in for one of the best live episodes of talking about sport you will have ever heard. And if you're lucky, we might do this again sometime. So as I said, sit back, relax, grab some popcorn and we'll be with you in about 30 seconds. Now, before we begin, it would be remiss of me not to ask you to like, subscribe, share with your friends, family, the dog, the cat, whoever. And also, if you fancy, we are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your audio podcasts. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
Good evening, guys, and welcome back to the Sportsman Untitled. I'm delighted, as always, to be joined by Benjamin Bloom, Gab Sutton, and Bristol City fan Paul Hinton tonight. My word, what a semi-final we've just witnessed. 6-0 to Sheffield United on aggregate. Please do get your comments, questions, and thoughts in the chat, and I'll put some up on screen and we'll try and answer them as we go along. We could also be getting a video from our Sheffield United contributor, Ollie Mann, at some point in the evening, and I'm sure he's very, very happy indeed after that 6-0 win. Pete, I think we come to you first, mate, because your team have just been on the end. Your team have just been on the end of the heaviest Championship semi-final defeat on aggregate we've ever seen. It was pretty brutal tonight, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I think it looked like was that the biggest gap between sixth and third points wise, the lowest amount of points to ever finish in the playoffs. I think that probably showed. I think if probably summarised a lot of what Bristol City fans have thought throughout the season, really. Like, we've played some pretty decent stuff, but didn't really have anything to show for it at the end, and we conceded some really soft goals. So I think the fact you look at the team that we finished with, the fact we didn't have a full squad, I think the last 25-30 minutes, most Bristol City fans wanted the game to be over, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you could kind of see that. And I know you mentioned on our playoff preview show that you'd kind of been struggling to fill out the bench in some of the games leading up to these playoffs. Ben, throwing to you now, what did you make of it? It felt like, I mean, as Pete just summarised, a bit of a massive difference between the two sides tonight.
Yeah, it's easy to reach that conclusion kind of after the fact, and it's so hard to know. I was kind of asking the audience in my watch along, Simon, does the second leg now mitigate the first leg basically turning on a red card, or does it not, or does that game state still pass across? But it's a bit of a shame to see a playoff semi-final. I know there's a broader conversation about the massive chasms in down English football, and obviously between the Championship top three and the rest, basically. But without being patronising to Bristol City, they've done a superb job to get there. As Pete says, 68 points is, kind of sneaking in the door, lowest along with Leicester, isn't it? It was just a shame it went so far south. But you make a fair point, Simon, and literally a back five even of players I've seen play at fullback, period. No centre backs on the bench. Obviously, Gab pointed out that Williams went out in the first leg as well, so there was a chasm between the two in the end. And we talk a lot about the jeopardy, Simon, and the beauty of the playoffs, and there's a reason we haven't got a 6-goal kind of margin of victory, and this is the first one ever, which is a shame because Bristol City aren't the worst team ever to be in the playoffs, and Sheffield United aren't the best team ever to be in the playoffs. But unfortunately, a result that will go down in infamy.
Yeah, absolutely. Gab, I actually thought, looking at some positives, I think Bristol City started the game really, really well. And I think for the first half an hour, they were really taking it to Sheffield United. Ultimately, they kind of ran out of steam in the end, it looked like, and got picked apart a bit. Can we take some positives from this Bristol City performance over two legs at all?
Yeah, I think they. I think in the first game they had a reasonable amount of the territory without quite finding that extra bit of incision in the final third. I think they will take some encouragement from the fact that in that opening period they tested Michael Cooper and gave him a lot more work to do than maybe he'd had to do at Ashton Gate. So I mean, from Pete's point of view, I imagine there's some positives to take from that, albeit not really the stage of the season to be overly focused on performance, because it was all about results. But that opening period, Bristol City were highly competitive.
Yeah, Pete.
Yeah, we were.
That, mate.
Yeah. I think, let's say it was good. Half hour, it's good that we didn't shy away from it. I think it's just, I think I said like how it opened. It was just a bit of a summation of the season that we played well, but didn't really have anything to show for it. Michael Cooper throughout the 2 games has had probably 2 saves to make.
Pete, sorry to dive in. 0.7 XG Bristol
Yeah.
City made over the 180 minutes, which is less than the Harrison Burrows penalty.
Yeah, that I mean, it's just. I mean, you mentioned, you guys mentioned Joe Williams. I mean, him hitting the bar in the first half feels like it was about 3 years ago at this stage. I don't know if that goes in, it's a different game, and I think it's just a bit of a shame that the whole tie is hinged on obviously Rob Dickie getting sent off, which I think is completely the right decision. By the way, it's 100% a penalty and a red card, but obviously for the neutral, for Bristol City fans, would have been a much more enjoyable 2 games if it's 11v11 and he's available for this game.
Do you think that rolls into the second game, though, affecting the narrative? Can we say, oh, well, look, it doesn't matter because they lost the second game 3-0, or does that change everything even approaching the second game?
I think it changes everything because, we've come into today with Zach Viner as our only centre-back at the club, ultimately. And so we've ended today with, started and ended today playing 3 at the back with 2 wing-backs at centre-back, ultimately. Which I think is probably a combination of put a bit of recruitment, obviously injuries comes into it as well, and then Rob getting sent off on Thursday. But yeah, I mean, to finish the game today the way that we did, and what is our ultimately the 2 biggest games we've had in 17 years, to end it the way that we have done with the squad that we've got is, I think, just a bit of it's not a great reflection on all involved, really.
Absolutely. I want to have a quick discussion about the Championship promotion odds now up on Betfred. Unfortunately, Bristol City out of the running now for you, Pete, this season. Gab, at the moment we've got Sheffield United 8-13 to go up, Sunderland 13-8, and Coventry 15-2. How do you view those odds right now? Obviously, Sheffield United have booked their place in the final. We'll see what happens tomorrow with the other 2.
Yeah, I mean, Sheffield United look very short, 8-13, considering Sunderland have been up there all season, if it is Sunderland in the final, or if it's Coventry, it's a team that's got a momentum from having gone to the Stadium of Light and sort of turned things around. I would say the former scenario is a bit more likely. I think really, I'm not sure that Sheffield United have necessarily been, performance-wise, unbelievable across the 2 games. I would hazard the guess that over the 2 games they've scored from a high proportion of their shots on target, and which has maybe given the scorelines that they've been by far the better team. But I think
3
maybe
shots on target tonight, Gab.
3 shots on target tonight and 3 goals. There you go.
It's a very high proportion.
The very high proportion, exactly. So, I'm not sure that I would necessarily rush to say Sheffield United are absolute massive favourites. I think 8-13 is probably a bit short for me. I agree they should be favourites, but maybe wouldn't go 8-13.
Agree with that, Ben?
It'll all change at full time tomorrow when we go to a 2-horse race. So I think there's a bit of timing in the Betfred market there, Simon. And I mean, even before a ball was kicked, you would have had it going that way, given the points totals that, particularly Bristol City at the one end of, I know they're out of the running now, had accrued, and Sheffield United obviously, on pitch 92. So yeah, I agree with Gab that odds on now is a little bit stingy from our friends at Betfred, but that will obviously change the closer and closer we get to kick off on the 24th. And we have a mighty tie to get out of the way first, which is going to inform what happens to that price.
Absolutely, and we'll come on to that later on, a little preview for tomorrow's game. Pete, who are you backing for promotion now out of the final 3? Sorry, I
mean,
say final three like Coventry have qualified for anything there. We haven't. We're just playing in the second semi-final.
You're in my final three. We're playing take that rule the world.
Go on, Pete. Are you back in for promotion?
I mean, I said Coventry last week, didn't I? But I think Sheffield United, I mean, to score 6 goals and not concede in 2 games is going to give you massive confidence, isn't it? So I'd probably edge towards Sheffield United now, but like Ben said, it all depends on... I think tomorrow's going to be a brilliant game, and I can relax. I can watch it a bit more relaxed now as a neutral, but probably be a lot tighter than ours have been. But yeah, you probably nod towards Sheffield United just with how convincing they've been in the last 2 games.
Yeah, very fair indeed. We've had loads of comments in. Please do keep getting your comments and questions in. We'll answer a few of them now. One of them comes in from, of course, Conor McGilligan, who hosted our preview show. Pete, my man, what was that? Big up the panel. Do you want to reply to that, Pete? I mean, as I said at the start of the show, just quite a harsh playoff experience after 17 years.
Yeah, it's a bit. It's just, it's probably repeating what I said at the start. I think just the gulf that everyone, the league table reflected was just reflected in the 2 games, I think. And I think it's probably just a shame for our perspective that we've got injuries, we've ran out of steam and had some poor performances going into the playoffs anyway, so we probably haven't been able to give the best account of ourselves. But yeah, certainly no complaints. Yeah, the Leeds game a few weeks back and today is the 2 longest 90 minutes I can remember.
Pete, this achievement for Bristol City, first top 6 finishing at Championship level, because he did win the League One title in 14-15, but highest finish at Championship level in 17 years. That's a huge step forward for the club. I'm just wondering what you think the priorities are for the club in order to build on this. Is it keeping hold of Liam Manning? Is it recruiting to make the squad slightly better balanced? Because I look at that squad, I see 4 or 5 players in there that I think you can really move forward with as part of an 11 to go and challenge. But I also see 4 or 5 parts of that 11 where you're thinking it's looking a little bit imbalanced, perhaps.
Yeah, we probably need 2 strikers, at least 1 goalkeeper. And then from there, it's probably with Liam Manning to decide whether he wants to stick with 3-5-2 or go back to 4-2-3-1. I think it's weird because we turn of the year, we went 3-5-2 and that in turn made us a lot better after Christmas. But we spent the whole summer recruiting and playing in pre-season to 4-2-3-1, which is why we're now in a position where, you hear Akawa's playing at wing back. We're playing Mehmeti and you at times as number 10. So it's almost been a bit weird where it's the recruitment, the formation that we didn't recruit for, we've ended up being a lot better in. So they probably need to figure out if they stick with that or if they go back to what we recruited for last summer. But either way, I think we'd need 2 strikers and a keeper at the minimum. And then it's a case of, do you keep, I think it's keeping hold of Jason Knight is number 1. And
Max
then
Bird as well.
It's Max Bird. Yeah. Naki Wells, they're still sorting out his contract. He's out of contract in the summer. And then, they'll probably be, if we start well, or there's already been rumblings of Liam Manning, being linked to Leicester, linked to Norwich. So I think that will probably stick around as well.
I don't know about Naki Wells as a centre forward moving forward, Pete, just because I can see that he's a really classy finisher and there's a big attraction there. But I think in terms of the aggression against the ball, which I think you probably need in a centre forward if you're a club that maybe doesn't have parachute payments because you're going to be up against some good teams, I'm not sure that Naki Wells at this stage of his career can really do that to the level that you need. And then you've got Sinclair Armstrong, who's very raw, and then Fally Maulu, not quite sure what happened with him, but... Yeah, you look for me. I think you need an athletic centre forward that can go strong in the press, but also has elements of Wells's sort of finishing quality.
Yeah, and they recruited over Wells twice really with Armstrong and Miulu, and I'd say that was with playing 2 up top in mind almost. So yeah, I don't think anyone was expecting Naki Wells to have the season that he's had. He was almost kind of not pushed out the door, but it was made quite clear that he wouldn't get many minutes. But it also became quite clear quite early on that Fally and Sinks weren't going to work. So I think it's a weird one where we can't rely on him again next year, but also him and someone like Ross McCrory in some ways have saved the season. It's quite weird that, Naki's been here over 5 years and he seems to just keep finding a way to keep coming back.
Absolutely. Ben, for your point of view, do you see Manning sticking around at Bristol City for next season? And we've had a few comments in saying, are they looking forward to finishing 12th again next season, which I think is a little bit harsh. But how do they continue this kind of momentum they've built up to crack the top 6 this season, and can they do it again next season?
Well, traditionally, Simon, as you well know, teams that have really good seasons and lose in the playoffs tend to have their best players pillaged, often by the parachute teams, don't they? However, this is where scoring 68 points might actually help, because it might be that you're not seen as a fertile ground for people to go shopping. But Gab's absolutely right. Anyone would take Jason Knight in the up and down the league in terms of their squad if they feel they can get him away from Bristol City. And then it's the argument of, if Leicester opens up with or without a point deduction, but with a parachute payment for the next 2 years, do you chance your arm? And I love Liam Manning, but he was very quickly out of. Gab and I discussed this about Matt Bloomfield. He was quickly out of Oxford, wasn't he, to take the Bristol City job? So you don't know. I'd like to see him stay. I think it's. I don't want to bring up the horrific events in his personal life, but sometimes that does bond you to a club. If you go through that together, maybe you're less likely to go, I missed the career, I want to go off to Norwich because they've got a Premier League history, and Leicester because they've got parachute payments. Maybe that does bond you, but only Liam Manning, and it's not any of our place to kind of speak on that, knows that. But I'd like to see him stay and continue the job. I think he's a good manager, and both Gab and Pete are right. Can they? Everyone wants you to keep all your best players and sign some new ones on top, but in the reality of the way football finance works, the haves and the have-nots in the Championship, and Bristol City will not be in the haves in terms of recruitment. So they're going to have to pull some more rabbits out of hats. But I do think it's a bit of a cliche, the whole Bristol needs a Premier League club. They haven't had one yet. But there was a lot of goodwill when they were close to the playoffs. I think people like seeing them up there and challenging. So, maybe we'll see it again next season.
Maybe. I think you are right there with the haves and have-nots, especially when you look at the teams coming up from League One. And I know Gab's grinning down there with the amount of money Birmingham City are going to spend this summer to challengers in the Championship. So it feels like maybe a more competitive pack for the playoffs next season. Not sure the kind of 68, 69 point mark will be enough. Pete, from your point of view, can you do it again? What needs to happen?
There's no reason we can't. I think it all comes down to recruitment in the summer. I think losing George Earthy will be a big loss. I can't see him coming back on loan. Again, it's a weird one where probably first half of the season you're wondering why he came in, but second half everyone's totally got it. So I think it's just another big summer recruitment. I think it's questions over goalkeeper, striker. To get a new number 1, to get a new number 9, that's going to be majority of any team's transfer budget, isn't it? So, and let's say the team's coming up from the League One, teams coming down from the Premier League, it's always going to be pretty tough. But I think it's just a case of trying to get something early. I think everyone associated with the club is hoping that Antoine Semenyo goes as early as possible from Bournemouth, because I think that opens up about potentially 8 to 10 million in sell-on. So I think we'll be pushing that through
if they do get that sell on.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that will be that. I think that's the one that we hope won't drag on, because when Alex Scott went a few years ago, that was obviously in our hands, and we knew it was going to be at least 20. It was the case of who was going to pay it and how much over 20 it was going to be. Whereas obviously this is completely out of our hands, but it will still be a substantial sum.
Absolutely. We had a comment in as well. Finishing higher than Norwich, Borough and Millwall was a magic trick by Bristol City. It's a good season even with the result tonight. Might not feel like it right now, I guess, after a 6-0, but it has been a really positive season for Bristol City. Gab, I just want to come to you quickly, because we've talked an awful lot about Bristol City. We should also talk about the winners of this tie, one game away from the Premier League now. Massive credit to Sheffield United, the way they handled this game, the way they were clinical in their performance, the way Wilder approached it. So many positives for them to take.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big one for me was Vinicius Souza in midfield because I thought he battled really well tonight, and I think he sets really high standards for himself. There was one moment that Danny Hull reported in the Sheffield Star where he was trying to pick out a teammate with a really audacious pass over the top, which shows the quality he's got. It didn't quite come off. This was when Sheffield United were they've been comfortably ahead all evening, haven't they? But it shows he sets really high standards for himself, both in terms of aggression against the ball and on a technical level, and he's been one of the best players in the division for me, and he's done so well as well to come back from a lot of the criticism that was coming his way in the summer. A lot of Sheffield United fans wanted him gone, and I don't think many really foresaw him having the season that he's had, but he's been a real influence both to Ollie Arblaster in the first half of the season and to Sidney Peck in the second half of the season, who's complimented him as a really progressive talent, and I'd be really excited to see him playing in the Premier League next season as well, if, of course, they win that Wembley final.
Absolutely. And Ben, for me, it feels like their goals are coming from all over the park at the minute. It feels like they're not just relying on where they went through that spell where Campbell was scoring every other week. It feels like they've now got a more kind of wide open attack. We've seen Callum O'Hare score twice off the bench in these two semi-finals, pushing for a starting spot. This could be a real factor in them going to Wembley and winning, right?
And, 90 minutes before the game, you wouldn't be surprised whatever, kind of configuration Chris Wilder ends up going with in the final. He's got plenty of options. It's interesting you mention O'Hare, because I bet he doesn't start at Wembley, because Wilder seems determined to have him like a caged tiger coming off the... Well, and it's worked, hasn't it? Look, the step
Maybe
over...
they do keep him in a cage on the bench, Ben.
Well, absolutely, there you go. But the step over for the Brooks goal and the goal in the first leg, and he's scored again tonight. He's a proper weapon off the bench. And I think the one thing you do know, Simon, though, is that Cooper, Ahmedhodzic, Robinson, Chowdhury and Burrows will be the back five at Wembley, and it's very, very staid and very, very solid, isn't it? So, very interesting. And Gus Harmer loves the playoffs, and he's showing up again, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. You might even be able to name Peck, Souza and Harmer as well in that kind of midfield as well. So you've got almost a starting 8 there, and it's maybe the only 3 other places that are up for debate at all, although Kiefer done very well in these semi-finals. We're going to move on now to talk about tomorrow night's game, Sunderland Coventry at the Stadium of Light. Of course, Sunderland winning that first leg 2-1. Just going to throw the odds up there for you now. To win the tie, Sunderland are 1-5 on Betfred. Coventry 10-3, kind of reflected of that 1-goal deficit they have. To win the match on the night, Sunderland 6-5, Coventry 11-5. Ben, I'm throwing over to you to do some hosting duties here, because I'm going to take the Coventry City fan role, mate. So over to you.
Yeah, we'll go to the partisan member of the panel here last, I think, Simon. But Pete, what's your take on this second leg? And I think the thing we're most fascinated by is, will the game start with a repeat of the pattern from the first leg, i.e. you have Sunderland sitting and Coventry kind of trying to control, Sunderland waiting to counter-attack. We now have Sunderland at home and Sunderland with a lead. So how do you see this thing kind of fleshing out from kickoff?
Yeah, probably the same. I think, again, as a neutral, Sunderland scoring that late and having a lead at home was the best thing. 'Cause now Coventry have to come out and score, don't they? It's not like they play for extra time, play for penalties, try not to concede because they're 1-0 up. I mean, they're going to have to... You wouldn't think they'll be happy to keep it pretty cagey and then try and attack them second half or something, because time might run out. So I'd be surprised if they weren't, particularly with how the quality of attacking players they've got. I'd be really surprised if it wasn't a pretty much mirror image of how the first leg started, to be honest.
What's your take, Gab? And what is the kind of best case, worst case scenario here? A, for the neutral, and I mean, we've got to almost look at it from the Coventry prism, because they're the ones that have got to go there and make something happen, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be so important for Coventry City to get their midfield pairing, because we've seen, and Simon can touch on this in a little more detail from the ThatCovPod perspective. You've got Matt Grimes, you've got Jack Rodoni, and you've got Ben Sheaf, who the three of them, they complement each other so well. They've all got different qualities, and when you get them purring, they're one of the best midfielders in the Championship. So that is the one thing that Sunderland have to be a little bit wary of. That if they drop off too much, because they did employ a very conservative game plan when the game was 0-0, let alone now they've got a 1-goal lead. They can't drop off so much that they allow those three midfielders to take control. And I guess from Simon's point of view, that's what Coventry are going to be aiming to do.
Simon, we'll get to you in a second. Pete, does a Sunderland opening goal just kill it completely?
Oh, I don't know. Not with Frank Lampard team in the playoffs. I'll talk with sort of Derby, you think. No, I think both teams got too much quality. I think Coventry got too much quality, even with chasing 2 goals. If they're in just need one more goal with 5-10 minutes to go in a playoff game, I think all of us have seen playoff games across each 3 of the divisions to know that that's easily doable.
Simon, I promise. One more to Gab quickly, and then
I'm
we'll
like Callum O'Hare, a caged tiger.
There you go. There you go. It's continuity, everybody. We've done this before. Gab, just talk to me about the 2 men in the dugouts. Does it come down to those 2 when it's such fine margins? And it was definitely a huge W for Regis. Not that Lampard got a lot wrong, but Regis Lebris was looking very pleased with himself, and rightly so, in his post-match, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think Sunderland having a 4-4, they've always been a 4-4-2 side out of possession, but recently they've kind of gone to that 4-4-2 as a general shape with Isidore and Mayenda up top, and that was a massive success because they had those 2 main counter-attacking outlets and 2 really solid banks of 4. And I think on the one hand, you've got Regis Lebris saying, yes, with a cigar up and the glasses, yep, I absolutely bossed it, a brilliant game plan. On the other hand, there's part of me that thinks, in the first half, second half as well, I'm thinking in the first half there were moments where Coventry got into some good areas and it required a bit of last-ditch defending from Sunderland. And Dan Ballard as well probably produced his best performance of the season. He was just absolutely outstanding in the box and just constantly heading everything away and putting his head in where it hurts. Dan Neil, I think I mentioned as well when we recorded the reaction show. So on the one hand, yes, it's managerial nice, and I'm sure Regis Lebris can take a lot of credit for that. But at the same time, when it comes to those crunch moments, you need your players to step up and deliver. In the first leg, Sunderland's players did that. We're about to find out if they're going to do it in the second leg.
Simon, sometimes when you go and watch a good movie and they kind of hide back what the narrative, you have one of those moments. Did you feel that in the stadium? Gab and I discussed this the other night of when the Wilson Isidore goal, I know Coventry equalised immediately. When that hit the net, I was like, this is how this one's playing out. They've actually got something here on the counter-attack. Were you a bit taken by surprise in the first leg before we get on to the second?
Was I? Yeah, I guess I was a little bit. I didn't expect them, and I've discussed this with Johnny from Roker Report, who was on the preview show as well on my channel, but he was surprised how they went about it in that way. They've played the 4-4-2 before, but they've not let the centre-backs have the ball in that way. They've not cut the passing lanes in that way kind of before so aggressively, and they've not just kind of pressed us forward like that, long balls in the counter-attack, and really put us under pressure. The speed they counter-attacked at was magnificent, to be honest. I didn't expect us to have 75% possession or whatever we ended up with in the end. That was absolutely bonkers. I was very impressed with them. Very impressed with Regis Lebris, with what he planned out. Maybe Lampard went for it a bit too much after we equalised, if you can say that, but the crowd was onside. We really pushed forward, and ultimately it was only an individual error that cost us a draw in the first leg. So, yeah, I was very impressed with Sunderland, I've got to be honest.
What does Lampard change then, Simon? There's got to be something that he can tweak. You weren't a million miles off the other night. Is it a personnel change? Is it a formational change? Is it a subtle tweak? Is that what do you think Frank Lampard can do to make sure that you take the game to Sunderland at the Stadium of Light?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think he said in his pre-match press conference he's not going to change too much because he was quite happy with the performance. I understand where he's coming from. I understand where he's coming from there, and Ben, you're right to stroke your chin if he's got something up his sleeve. But he has played pretty much the same way when he's got players fit. I think the back four will stay the same. I think the midfield three will stay the same. I think the weapon he's got up his sleeve is, and the problem he needs to solve at the same time is what to do up front. I think if he can bring Mason Clark in from the start and play him on the left, he's been out injured. He came on for the last 20 minutes. Sakamoto on the right gives us good balance. And we probably need Hadji Wright playing down the middle because every other option we've tried so far hasn't worked. Thomas Asante was very quiet. Staggered that he didn't throw Ellis Sims on at any time during the first leg, even when we were chasing a goal. That felt like a bit of a baffling decision. But he just needs to kind of pull something out of the hat, and I'm hoping that Mason Clark and Hadji Wright can maybe make it happen because they both started when we beat them 3-0 at home, which obviously this is a very, very different game. I'm expecting Sunderland to come out in the first 20 minutes and try and kill us off with a goal or two. If we can get through that and keep the ball a bit, I don't think we necessarily have to do a lot with the ball. If we can just keep 60% possession, we could make it a little bit more nervy for them, and then anything might happen later on. But we kind of need to get through those opening stages of the game first.
I've just got my popcorn at the ready. I would just love to see the game kick off. Sunderland just go into the 4-4-2 shape and go on then, what you got? I'm going to be like rubbing my hands. I think that'd be great. Simon, do you want to flip back to you for the predictions now, or do you want me to carry on?
Yeah, well, I'll come to all of you. I mean, we can go round if you want predictions for this second leg. I'll start. I'll kick us off. Why not? I think it's going to be a score draw, which will painfully not be enough for Coventry. I'm going to go for a 1-1. I think, Ben, you're right. Whoever scores first, I can see a scenario where Sunderland are leading with 10 minutes to go and Regis Lebris just takes what he has and he puts on Chris Meffam. He goes to 5 at the back and they just defend their way out of it. And I think there'll be a lot of pressure. It'll be a very nervy and exciting ending. But I think it'll just be a Sunderland to edge through with a draw on the night. What about you, Ben?
I've got evidence of it as well. I don't know if you can see it. I went 2-2 on the night, which would obviously be Sunderland qualifying 4-3 on aggregate. I do want my popcorn out. I don't really even know what my rationale there is. Maybe Sunderland score, Coventry score, Sunderland score, Coventry score, something like that. I would just be fascinated if Coventry scored first. And I was going back and forth on YouTube today with someone about playoff trauma, and he was like, players, and I'm like, it's not the players, mate, it's the fans you got to worry about. If that 48,000 goes south, they'll take the players with them. So I've got 2-2 and Sunderland qualifying for the final. Sorry, Simon.
That's all right. I would like to point out, by the way, that Sunderland have never lost a game in the playoffs at the Stadium of Light. 7 wins out of 8.
As I've been reminded 35 times today in the YouTube comments.
So, if Cov do pull this off, it'll be a first-time loss at the Stadium of Light. Pete, what are you saying for this game score predictions?
I'll go for another 2-1 Sunderland win. I think because of the Stadium Light factor, I can probably see it being something like Ben mentioned, where Coventry need a goal with 5-10 minutes to go and a bit of an onslaught, but Sunderland to hold on. I can't see them losing the game at the Stadium of Light with that fan base personally.
So it's down to Gab to give
me a shred
Coventry of positivity. Gab,
I'm gonna say 3-1 to Sunderland because I think having Matt Grimes as the deepest midfielder has advantages in terms of getting him on the ball a lot, but I think it can also mean that in terms of those defensive transitions, Coventry might be easier to carve open than they might be if Ben Chief was the deepest of the 3 midfielders. So that's where I think, again, Wilson Isdor and Elisa Meander can cut Coventry open on the counter-attack, especially on the second half, as it'll get to sort of needs-must territory.
We've got some positivity in the comments here. Coventry win 1-0 and then win on pens. Cov win 3-1. Can I order a 2-1 Cov? Cov win on pens, please. I mean, Sunderland have got a pretty poor record on penalties this season in general. I think they've missed 4 out of 5.
Well, Simon, we've got to get extra time this week at some point as well, haven't we? Maybe it's not Championship, but it's going to happen, isn't it? I'm getting a late night, surely.
It will happen at some point. I hope it's this game, to be honest. I just hope we have a more competitive game for the neutral than potentially we saw in the Sheffield United Bristol City game. Sorry again, Pete. I feel so bad about saying these things. But for the neutral and for the Championship, it would be better if it is kind of a competitive game, and we'll see what happens. We'll see you play Sheffield United in the final. Talking of which, on Tuesday the 20th, we have a playoff final preview show to bring you. It's going to be me and Gab Sutton, joined by a guest from both of the finalists. It's unlikely I'll be a guest at this stage, but we'll see what happens tomorrow night. So make sure you tune in and like and subscribe to The Sportsman to take note of that when it comes out. Any final thoughts, guys? Ben, Gab, Ben, do you want to wrap up?
I think you want to take that question down there, don't you, mate, from Sonny Son?
Sorry, I've just seen that pop up. As a fellow Cov fan, who are we buying after we beat Sunderland and the Blades to make the Premier League? Wow, there is a dose of positivity for as well. It should probably be this guy behind us, right? 15 million buyback clause, Gus Hamer. If Sheffield United miss out on promotion and we take their best player, sounds like a bit of a dream. Is a serious signing. I would actually like us to see us go after someone like Alfie Doughty at the left back, given Luton have gone down. We need a left back. I think that can make a lot of sense for all parties. But yeah, Gus Hamer for the dream. Right, I think we'll leave it there, guys. Pete, thank you so much, and commiserations once again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Making your Sportsman debut. Ben and Gab, thank you very much. May speak to you tomorrow night after the Coventry Sunderland game. We'll be back live reacting after full time in that one, where hopefully we'll be seeing and celebrating a Coventry City Wembley appearance. But that is, guys, that's all from us, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Thanks very much.